asked whether a certain Victor Gyökeres would be joining them.
Well, you know that I'm not going to play against any player that is not with us yet.
Short, sweet, and giving absolutely nothing away, was he? James, dare I ask where we are with this deal?
Honestly, with Arteta and any transfer news, it's like water is wet. Arteta dismisses everything.
Yeah.
It's the same every single time. Nothing changes.
No, no.
You've got to feel for reporters sometimes when
give
you're
him the
put in a
hard
position.
stare. Sometimes that works for me, if I can just get a little bit more out of him.
But he still doesn't. I will not talk about any players. Look, we will talk about it. And what we do know about Victor Gyökeres is the player is currently waiting for permission to fly over to Singapore to finalise his move to Arsenal and join Arsenal's pre-season tour. What we also do know is that final details of a deal worth around £63.5 million are being finalised. Arsenal set to pay a fixed fee of £55.1 million. Plus £8.7 million in add-ons. That's been the stumbling block. That's been the part that's taken a little bit of time to be completed. But once the agreement is finalised, the player's expected to fly to Singapore to undergo a medical and finally sign for Arsenal. And that means that no more questions about Arsenal finally signing a striker. It looks set to happen. And, you know, a pretty good striker at that, and Arsenal are hopeful that he could play some part in their pre-season tour over there. They played AC Milan today, beat them 1-0, lost on penalties, had Kai Havertz back as that number 9 forward, but I'm sure they're looking for that real, true, proper number 9. And, well, Victor Gyökeres scoring 54 goals in 52 games last season for Sporting could well be that player.
And there's another one, Dharmesh, that's edging closer to arriving at Arsenal, isn't there?
Christian Mosquera, he's actually in Singapore. We told you yesterday that he was joining up on Arsenal's pre-season tour. Look, he's understood to have agreed a 5-year deal with a 1-year option. Arsenal will pay Valencia an initial £13 million plus performance-related add-ons. This is now a case of when and not if. We're expecting a formal announcement soon. We even thought it might have come today. It might not come today, but it is going to come very soon. They actually played in a pre-season game today. They beat AC Milan over 90 minutes, and then they lost the penalty.
Yes,
It was all pre-arranged. But they play Newcastle United.
You can tell he wasn't listening to me.
Yeah.
No, I know.
No,
yeah.
it's fine.
Saka with the goal there, wasn't it?
They'll play Newcastle United on Sunday. So whether he'll be available for that or not, we'll soon find out. But Mosquera is very close to happening, and it is some window, this, for Arsenal. Kepa Arrizabalaga coming in as a number 2, a one-time £70 million goalkeeper. Christian Norgard coming from Brentford. Martin Zubamendi from Real Sociedad. Noni Madueke as well. And imminently Mosquera and what James mentioned there in Victor Gyökeres. This is an example of how this new system and new structure is working at Arsenal. Edu has left. Andrea Berta has come in, and Mikel Arteta has spoken so highly of the job that he's done. And it's been a case of Andrea Berta speaking to the clubs and being key in the club-to-club negotiations, while Mikel Arteta is really key when it comes to talking to the player. So this combination has given Arsenal what looks like a really, really impressive transfer window.
It's been like a seamless transition since he's come in, but the Mosquera signing's interesting because he's just 21 years old. Now, Arsenal are set and primed to win now. You can see that by the fact they've signed Zubamendi, the fact they've brought in Norgard with the experience, and what looks like Victor Gyökeres, a 27-year-old. They are ready to win now, but they're also looking at the future. A 21-year-old on a 5-year contract to not only provide competition for William Saliba, Gabriel, but also to be part of the first-team squad for the future is really important for clubs to continue to do in this window. But it's also contracts as well. If you look in the summer, they signed Gabriel to a long-term contract. They locked down Miles Lewis-Skelly to a long-term contract. Ethan Nwaneri, it still hasn't been announced, but it looks set to be announced, a new 5-year contract. So 7-year-old, they are ready to win now, but they're also looking at the future. A 21-year-old on a 5-year contract to not only provide competition for William Saliba, Gabriel, but also to be part of the first-team squad for the future. But it's a contract as well. If you look at summer, they signed Gabriel to a long-term contract. They locked down Miles Skelly to a long-term contract. Even Nwaneri, it hasn't been accepted, announced a new 5-year contract. So not only is Andrea Berta at the forefront bringing in transfers and bringing in players, he's also ensuring the current crop of players are staying long-term at Arsenal.
And they'll need to probably keep doing that, won't they, if they're going to catch Wilson, who they're continuing to strengthen despite having a fantastic season. Where are we with Ugo Ekitike? We are anxiously waiting, aren't we?
I think this is close. We are expecting this deal to be finalised today, actually, before the player flies out to Liverpool's pre-season tour of Asia. Now, the player began a medical yesterday in London. Personal terms have been agreed. And this is a deal of £79 million with Eintracht Frankfurt, £69 million fixed fee, £10 million in add-ons. That just seems like how all the deals right now are being conducted. That's what we are all reporting on right now. And we know a striker's been a priority for Liverpool in this window. For Frankfurt in particular, they signed a player just a year ago for £14 million. A £65 million profit is incredible work. But we also know with this player, Newcastle were the first to act, actually, just about a week ago when we reported it was a £70 million bid rejected by Frankfurt from Newcastle. But for Liverpool, it's just showing their ambition in this transfer window. They've already smashed the British transfer window, bringing in Florian Wirtz from Bayer Leverkusen, and they're spending in stopping by £79 million for a deal imminent for Gyökeres.
And that takes their spending to around about £3 million, Dom. How are they doing this?
I think that question is usually a question that rival clubs ask about Liverpool, because they're spending all of this money. How can they do it? Look, let's be honest. That club is fantastically run, number one. If you go back to last summer, they only brought in Federico Chiesa for about 10 or 11 million pounds. Admittedly, that one didn't work. They made 40 million pounds in sales of Fabio Carvalho, Bobby Clark and Sepp van den Berg. Add to that the increased market revenue plus Premier League money, Champions League money as well, and it's enabled them to spend this much money, and it's...
Is that the final piece, Shaka, that Arsenal need to win the title?
It's a much needed, long overdue piece. To Ian's point, we still have to wait to see exactly how Victor Gyökeres settles into the Premier League. Everything we've seen, certainly at Sporting, suggests, as Ian says, suggests that he should provide goals. The one thing, and to your question about the final piece, that I feel Arsenal have been missing for the last few years is that out-and-out goal scorer, that target man up front. If Gyökeres can do that, it certainly makes Arsenal a whole lot better. Making Arsenal better, while that's good in a vacuum, so has so many other clubs in the Premier League.
A lot of draws last season, Ale. That's what we're looking at here on this graphic. Had they had that striker, that target man up front, could that have changed for them and given them 3 points in some of these games?
Looking for a legit work-from-home job? Start by finding companies that are hiring work-from-home employees. FlexJobs has a list for that. What about companies hiring right now? They've got a list for that.
Well, yes. Now, we're assuming that in these games they didn't come from behind or they didn't score a late goal in order to tie it up. What sort of productivity do we need to have from this player in order for Arsenal to be indeed in this title race? Well, you look at Liverpool, and you look at Manchester City, and you look at Mohamed Salah, and you go to Erling Haaland, and you're looking at somewhere around 40 goals a season in all competitions. Now, he's coming from scoring 54 in Sporting. I'm not going to devalue the importance of scoring 54 goals because that's a lot of goals. That is a bunch of goals. Having said that, we need to assume that it's going to be more difficult for him in the Premier League, and that his level of productivity and consistency needs to be at the level of Salah and Erling Haaland. Now, that's historic levels, but that's what it's going to take for Arsenal to turn those games that you mentioned, those draws, into wins, and to turn those single points into 3 points, and to actually be there in the end where they think they should be. That's a big question. It's also a little bit concerning for me. All we know from Victor Gyökeres, if we're really honest with ourselves, because none of us are sitting back watching the Portuguese league every weekend. We're not doing it, okay? And that's the truth, right? And anybody that tells you, no, I'm all about it. Oh, I know what's happening between Sporting and Gil Vicente. Yeah, no, you don't. So what we know is what we have seen in Champions League from Victor Gyökeres. And we have the lasting image of how silly he made Manchester City look. And that was impressive. But then you ask yourself the question, well, who didn't make Manchester City look silly last season defensively? And so if that's the standard, then we have to be careful that that's the expectation we have for this player, because it is also true that in the defining moments of Champions League competition for Sporting, he was not first choice. Konrad Harder was. Again, since I'm not watching the Portuguese league every weekend, I cannot tell you how good Konrad Harder is or isn't. But I can tell you that if my guy, Victor Gyökeres, is the difference maker, then how come he's not starting that first game against Borussia Dortmund in the defining stages of...
Arsenal plan to fly Victor Gyökeres to Singapore for a medical ahead of his blockbuster move from Sporting CP. Mikel Arteta's side face AC Milan on Wednesday, which will come too soon for Gyökeres to feature, with the next friendly on Sunday against Newcastle. Arsenal appear close to finalising details